Hey YouTube, it's late November in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and the weather's starting to get a little bit colder. It's time to start winterizing the bike. For me, that means adding a windshield to the Scrambler. Like most of you, I did a ton of research before landing on a particular manufacturer for a windshield. What I settled on was a windshield from a company called Madstad Engineering, based out of Florida. Madstad makes purpose-built windshields for specific bikes, and in this case, I've got a model that's designed to fit a Triumph Scrambler. I've already got the kit assembled because I actually had this windshield on my wife's 2010 Scrambler that I, totaled. So, when you get a kit, if you decide to purchase this windshield, it's going to be in pieces. Fortunately, the assembly is super easy. The main brackets that we see here are, if I remember correctly, already put together. And the only thing that you'll be adding will be these screws, which actually hold the windshield to the main brackets. And then, of course, mounting these to the clamps on the handlebar risers. And then finally, adding the windshield itself to the brackets. Now, this is really good kit. You can tell from these brackets that, they're beefy. I like to call this class of kit Beef Wellington because it's chunky like Campbell's soup. I love the way that these mount. A lot of windshield mounts have multiple mounting points with adjusters, both at maybe like where it attaches to the handlebars and then also where it would attach to the windshield. And I'm not a huge fan of that. To me, that just adds a lot of variability where it's difficult or proves difficult to actually line up the windshield exactly where you want it. And maybe that's just my OCD kicking in, but what I love about this particular setup is these brackets mount directly on the clamp for your handlebar. And that positions the windshield basically where it needs to be, which means that all of your adjustments are going to be with this knob here and this groove. So you can see on this side maybe, you can see this groove runs the length of the bracket. And when you loosen this knob here, you're able to adjust the height of the windshield using this groove. And then also you can see there's a groove here which allows you to angle the windshield this way. Now, Madstad says that their particular design for the windshield provides the optimal reduction of wind buffeting, which is that annoying thing that causes wind to collect just behind the lip of the windshield when you're traveling at velocity. In my own experience, this windshield does a great job of blocking the wind without being noisy or causing wind to hit on the top of my helmet. Now, I'm 5'10", and Madstad sells their windshields at different lengths, and you're supposed to pick a height of the windshield based on your actual height. They've got a neat chart on their website that indicates, based on your height as a rider, what height of windshield you actually need to purchase. In addition to that, they have a series of tints. And I think this is the light gray option. I don't know, it's been kind of a while since I've ordered it. But you can see just with the pegboard here on the left, that's like a true white. And then you can see the effect that it has with the windshield over here. Mounting the windshield on the Scrambler, it's super easy. All we need to do is remove these top clamps and put the brackets in place. Now, before we get messing with anything on the controls of the bike, it's always a good idea to put a towel in place to prevent the tank from getting damaged in case we drop a tool or maybe a fastener. I've got a set of rocks risers that I've installed on the Scrambler, but because of the shape of the risers themselves, I don't think it's going to be an issue installing the Madstad brackets. Now, the risers are attached with number 6 metric bolts, just like the stock clamps. So we'll be using a number 6 Allen wrench to take those off. The trick here is to do one side at a time. So we're going to start with the left-hand side of the handlebar. My bracket down on the tank just for holding for a moment. And we'll get started on the left side clamp. Whoops. Now your kit's going to come with longer stainless steel number 6 bolts, and that's what you're going to use to fasten the clamp over the bracket into the bottom piece of the clamp. In addition, your kit's going to come with some spacers. Again, I said I had this windshield mounted on a bike that I wrecked, and unfortunately I wasn't there to take the windshield off, so I didn't get to keep my spacers. Now, I found some nylon spacers, and they work, but they're not optimal. I'm probably going to create some spacers with a piece of aluminum tubing in the future, but for now these will work. What I'm going to go ahead and do is put the top end of my clamp back into position, and hopefully that'll rest just right there. And then I'm going to take, this is the left side or the clutch side bracket for the windshield. I'm going to go ahead and set this up for mounting. We're going to take our bolt, we're going to run our washer through it, run that piece through the bracket itself, put our spacer on, and then line this up with the clamp. Everything should line up perfectly, and we're just going to get this kind of finger tight. Okay, we still have a ton of play on the bracket, which is what we need. I'm going to grab my other spacer, washer, and bolt and run this through on the other side. I'm going to get this tight enough that I think that the handlebars won't move when I loosen this clamp, but not too tight that I can't adjust this. It's kind of a fine line, but I think it's going to be somewhere in maybe this range. Now, it's not a big deal if I go to move this and the handlebars move. I have a pretty good idea of where they need to be, and I can always adjust those. But what I'd like to be able to do is mount the other bracket without the handlebars moving, but keeping this loose enough that when I actually put the windshield on, everything's adjustable and I can get it perfectly straight. Okay, we're ready to do the other side. Mechanics, if nothing else, are adept jugglers, as you always end up holding 6 things in your hand at once. Again, I don't want to get this too tight because I'd like to be able to mount the windshield onto the brackets and make sure that these have a bit of play on them so I can get them into an exact position. Okay, we're ready to actually mount the windshield. Now, I don't have a center stand on this bike yet, so I've gone around to the front and I've done myself a little favor. And that is, I've turned the handlebars to actually align these brackets where they're basically level to the ground. Now that's going to make mounting the windshield a bit easier because I'll be able to line it up perfectly. I'll know where it needs to sit relative to the rest of the bike. So the windshield mounts via these 4 Phillips screws and some rubber bungs to keep pressure off of the material as you tighten it down. So I'm going to go ahead and get this ready. Okay, I've got the brackets ready, and what I've done with the windshield is get one of the screws ready. If I remember correctly, it goes screw this little plastic spacer, followed by this foam slash rubber, I guess it's rubber material spacer, and then the bracket itself. So I'm going to carefully get this ready, and I'm sorry if that's out of focus, and then line it up and fasten at least one of these bolts. I'm not going to tighten this because I need the room to work between the windshield and the brackets, and I want to be able to adjust this to center it before it actually getting tightened down. Okay, I have the screws in position, and I feel like the windshield itself is fairly well aligned to the brackets, from what I can tell. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down just to keep them from moving. Now, as I mentioned before, these two adjuster knobs will allow you to adjust the angle and the height of the windshield. So I'm just going to loosen these up and push the windshield down quite a bit. Again, before I had it mounted on the stock clamps, and where the windshield was at was an appropriate height for my actual height on the bike. Everything's in position, and I'm just going to tighten these down. Before I finish up, I need to make sure that my Allen bolts on the rocks risers are tight. It's going to be difficult to gauge how tight to get these because I'm using those nylon spacers. Again, if you decide to go with this kit, you're going to have aluminum or metal spacers to offset the actual brackets from your clamps. Those will provide some really good feedback as you're tightening down these bolts, so you'll know exactly how tight they need to be. Okay, YouTube, the windshield's now mounted, so now the bike and I are ready for some colder weather. Thanks for watching the video. If you like what you saw, please share the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.